The film was withdrawn from active distribution, including the Sundance Film Festival in 2020, after questions arose about Latimer's claims of Indigenous identity. In a press release, the National Film Board says Inconvenient Indian is being released after a series of meaningful consultations involving all the Indigenous participants whose stories the film presents. And for more on APTN's decision to broadcast the film Inconvenient Indian, we're joined by Garnet Jones, APTN's Director of TV, Content and Special Events. Adam, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
So as we mentioned, Inconvenient Indian was pulled from distribution after Michelle Latimer's claims of indigeneity came into question. Why has APTN decided to air the film?
Well, we licensed the film a number of years ago before the film was completed, and so it was in some ways a matter of time before we were going to show it. And there's a lot of thought that went into the decision to screen the film ultimately, and after there was a lot of conversation between the participants in the film and the National Film Board and the producers, they all came to a point where they felt like it was appropriate to share the film, and there was an opportunity to share it with Indigenous audiences first, and I think that is absolutely the right decision. But even more than that, Inconvenient Indian is a really good film that celebrates all of the ways that there's these different Indigenous artists that are reclaiming Indigenous stories, narrative sovereignty. It really is an inspiring kind of feel-good story in a lot of ways. But then, in addition to that, for better or worse, it exists, unlike any other film right now, I think, kind of in the middle of its own cultural moment in history, where you have a film that is talking about narrative sovereignty and celebrating what's happening with Indigenous artists, that then becomes a flashpoint for controversy when the Indigenous identity of the director is questioned, and then that becomes a kind of a reckoning for the Indigenous arts community all on its own. So as a film, it captures that conversation and I think continues that conversation, and it's only appropriate that we share it with our audiences.
So the press release announcing this, Saul, said a lot of meaningful discussions took place ahead of this decision. Can you talk about what those meaningful discussions were?
Unfortunately, I can't, because those, APTN, we were involved in financing the film, but we weren't involved in the production of the film in the way that the producers were and the participants. So that was really like a kind of a private conversation that happened between the people who were most directly impacted by everything that happened.
Now, there seems to be some strong opinions about APTN's decision. What type of feedback have you been receiving about this?
So far, not really any. I think that there's a lot of people who are concerned about APTN screening the film, and in part, I think some of that is because those conversations that happened with participants of the film weren't public, so people don't really know what those conversations were. But I think that when they see the film and the celebratory tone of what the story is, they're going to feel really great about it being on APTN.
All right, well, Adam, thanks for taking a few minutes to discuss this with us today.
No problem. Thanks very much.